everyone. Welcome back to the AwardsWatch Podcast, brought to you by AwardsWatch.com. I am your editor over here, Ryan McQuade. I'm very tired because I was up all night last night. I was celebrating a lot in my personal life. You don't want to hear about that. It was a very emotional day yesterday. Sophia doesn't care. But joining me today is Sophia Ciminello.
Hi, everyone.
Tyler Doster.
Hello, everyone.
Kevin Lee.
Hey.
And Dan Bayer.
Happy spooky season.
We are not talking about Oscars today. It is a non-Oscar show. You want to hear that? Go to last week's episode. You want to hear more of it? You can go to next week's episode. Or maybe the week after, because we might not have an episode next week because I won't be here. I'll be at the Middleburg Film Festival. And I don't know what the schedule is going to be like for next week. And we might have to do a late show because I'll be away from my microphone. Or maybe Eric will do it. And Eric's not here today. Eric is not feeling well. So thoughts and prayers out to Eric. But what are we here to talk about today? We are here to talk about Halloween. Not specifically the franchise Halloween, though if we wanted to, we could talk about that and the state of that mess. We're here to talk about our top 5 favorite horror films of all time. We'll have some listener questions, and then we're just going to do that today. We're not going to do a game, so everybody can relax. We're not doing a game today. No, Sophia's really happy that we're not going to do a game today.
I'm very happy that Jigsaw will not be making an appearance unless Saw is in someone's top 5. So yeah.
I'm curious what everyone's criteria was for this because we had a little bit of debate going into this week. So does anybody have any criteria or things that they omitted before we start getting into our top 5s? Anybody want to start?
Yeah, my criteria was it's a horror movie.
There you go. There you go.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it has to be something that scares you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Scares most people, at least.
Yeah. I think I took out, so one of the movies that sort of prompted this debate was The Silence of the Lambs, which I personally don't consider a horror movie. And I kept it out of my list sort of selfishly because I would have had to rework the list that I already had. But anything that's sort of a crime thriller that has serial killers in it or anything like that, I sort of stayed away from. And personal criteria, horror is my favorite genre, probably. So I was really excited to make this list. And I have a lot of classics on my list because they were just really influential to me growing up. This was sort of the first genre of film that made me feel like an adult movie watcher. Like I wasn't like a little kid anymore. So I had to, I think, really honor those. But I do have a very weird one on the list that I'm excited to talk about, but all of mine are on the older side. I really wanted to think about, the ones that really paved the way for the current ones that I like now.
Kevin, Tyler, did you have any criteria?
Well, I follow the similar criteria as Sophia's. I also did not include Silence of the Lambs for the same reason. But also like I didn't include movies like Jaws, for example, because I find Jaws to be more like an adventure movie at times with thrills. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a similar thought process. And me personally, I teetered back and forth between, am I gonna pick the 5 that I think are the best horror films, or am I just gonna say screw it, I'm picking the 5 that just means the most to me? And that's the one I went with.
That's the one you should go with.
Yeah.
That's the one you should always go with. Because we can always sit here with like semantics of what is the best and
exactly.
But that's not as fun as a conversation as what truly personally scares us, what has scared us in the past, right. Stories that we have in relationship with those films, I think is and some of those can be classics, like Sophia, you mentioned, they can be like, very influential films in the genre. Some of them can be something very recent because you saw them in a theater with a bunch of people in college, or you saw them last week and you're like, oh my God, this is the scariest thing I've ever seen, or it could be Blonde. Either way, there's a ton of things out there that it could be. And so Tyler, before we kick off into our top 5s, did you have anything else, or did you have anything specifically?
Mine are all movies that scared me pretty much. I mean, just
movies. All of mine are pretty recent, to be honest, which is probably not surprising to anyone. But they're all movies that scared me in some way, freaked me out, made me jump. I do have a horror comedy on there. Or
Yeah.
at least I see it as a horror comedy. So we'll see.
That's fair. No, yeah, I think there's different subsets of the genre too when we're talking about these genre things, and it's nice to know that I won't be alone with a horror comedy on the list. So, how are we going to do this? We'll start with Sophia, then we'll go to Dan, and then we'll go to Kevin, Tyler, and myself. So, Sophia, let's just kick it off with you. Your number 5 horror film of all time.
All right. So I don't suspect that anyone has this on their list. So it might be a good place to start. I really love bizarre horror movies that are like very, very visual and that are about grief. So my number 5 is Don't Look Now from 1973. This is the Nicholas Roeg film starring Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie.
And all the sex.
Yeah.
Yes. So I was
Shout
going to
out
say,
to-
I think most likely now it's known for like the lore surrounding this sex scene between Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie and how Warren Beatty was so disturbed by it and how people think it was unsimulated, all of that. And it is like a fascinating sex scene specifically for 1973. Like the
Yeah.
way he edits between like scenes of them like in the sex scene with scenes of them getting dressed. Fascinating stuff. But if you guys, no one has this on their list, I'm guessing.
No.
But there's
No.
familiarity. Okay.
No, yeah. It's
Cool.
a great movie.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Mm.
Good.
It's one of the most uniquely edited horror films. Like
Yeah.
it's like if the opening scene of that movie does not hook you in, I don't know what will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And an all-time ending too. To be
Yes.
Mhm.
clear.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And part of the reason why I picked this one was because when I first saw this, I was so just not scared, but just disturbed by that opening scene. The use of the color red, what he's doing with that camera, and just the idea of losing a child and the effect that that can have on a family. But just, I don't know, that English imagery, it's so gothic, and I always love gothic settings. This is like a Du Maurier adaptation, like Rebecca. And I think he really honors that, but plays with it in very, very cool and inventive ways. So I love this one. And I highly recommend people check it out. It's really, really weird. I love Venice in it too. And those
Mhm.
creepy old ladies. Oh,
You can pick it up in the Criterion Collection. It's on Blu-ray
Yes,
in the
you
Criterion
can.
Collection right now. It's a great, great film. Who did I say next? Dan, you're next. You're number 5.
Yes, you said me next. And
You did.
I went back and forth with a few for my 5th spot, but I had to go with like one of the granddaddies. Psycho is a perfect movie.
Yeah.
yes.
I'm just gonna say it. Like it's a perfect movie, and the thing that I love so much about it is it's not the shower scene, which is fucking brilliant, but it's the scene after that where Norman is cleaning up the hotel room, and it mostly so much of it is done in like one really long take, and it is such a perfect, like, you're like, oh no, like, get the newspaper, don't forget the newspaper, Norman. Like, even after I've seen it 100 times, like, I don't want him to get caught.
Mhm.
Like, yet we have that ending, we know what happens. I think it's such a brilliant like scene of emotional transference. You are so invested in Marion Crane, and this scene is like perfectly calibrated to get you on Norman's side so that you are rooting for him for that second half. And then that sucker punch at the end, it's a perfect movie. The cinematography and this just like, it's chef's kiss perfect. That scene with, I will probably never be able to get that image of Arbogast falling down the stairs out of my head, like that weightless feeling of it. It's beautiful, and an all-timer of a score by Bernard Herrmann. And yeah. I know some people like have issues with like the doctor's monologue at the end, and yes, but even still, shirtless John Gavin in the opening scene more than makes up for
It's a balance out. Yeah, for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have this on their list?
Well, Dan and I ought to get married because guess
Ooh.
what is also my number 5?
Ah,
And my number 4.
Oh, there you go.
awesome.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yay.
All right. So
I wanna
let's all
add
talk
on-
about it right now.
I want to add on there and just say, I think it's because of Bernard Herrmann's score. The opening credits to Psycho, it hypes me up every time. It just hypes me up. It gets me so in the mood for the film. And I remember the first time I saw it, really taken aback by like the first 20 minutes of the movie, because the first 20 minutes of the movie is about Janet Leigh's character, Marion Crane, stealing money, and you're worried about her getting caught because she's on the run the entire time, right? And I remember feeling like, wow, I didn't think we would first associate the Psycho music with her on the run. But then when you eventually get to her unable to drive anymore because it's raining really hard and she needs a place to stay, and then you see the sign Bates Motel for the first time, it just puts a huge grin on my face every time. It's so good, guys.
It's so good. That score,
so
it like just gets you all tight and get your pulse quickening. It's fantastic.
Yeah, but I agree with what you said, Dan, about following Norman Bates. Like I remember the part where Norman's trying to put the car into the swamp.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my heart stopped when the car stopped sinking.
Yeah.
And then I caught myself thinking, wait a minute, why am I rooting for him?
Yeah.
Right? And I think it's one of the most like genius move in movies where the audience really goes, well, now what? Right? And I think I think you have to be very, very careful, and you have to know exactly where the script is going to really pull that off. But when you pull it off correctly, having now what, like halfway in the movie or early on in the movie, bold move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what's so cool about the flip that happens is that you have to think about, audiences in 1960, they're watching the first like 40 minutes of this movie and they're like, this is a noir. Like, we know what this is. We're used to this. We've seen so many of these movies before. And Hitchcock, in his brilliance in directing this, makes you feel so comfortable. You feel like you're watching some sort of police procedural that completely disarms you. And then all of a sudden, I mean, from what I've read of what audiences have said back then about seeing this movie, they were screaming in the theater because they didn't know what to do when that flip happens. You think you're watching this story about Marion Crane, and then she's gone. And you're forced. I like what you said, Dan, about like the crime scene, because Hitchcock leaves the camera there for so long where you fear for him when you're watching it, but you also realize that he's done this before, probably. Like he has some sort of familiarity with it. He's comfortable there. He knows what to do, and he's fooling us at the same time. So it's just beautiful. I love this movie so much. I think it's also fun. And I felt like I had to put a Hitchcock on here, and I love Vertigo. I love Rebecca. I love so many, but this just feels like his definitive achievement as a director to me, which is so crazy to say. I think the direction's brilliant. And we have to say too, Anthony Perkins, this
my God.
performance is just unreal. He invented Andrew Garfield here in this movie.
He invented Eddie Redmayne too.
Eddie Redmayne, maybe even Timothy Chalamet. I love how twitchy he is and but he's also someone who I feel like if you're Janet Leigh in this movie, if you're Marion Crane, it sort of makes sense why she implicitly trusts him, because he's so different from the other men who have been in her life or people she's on the run from. So I love him here. I think the Arbogast death is more shocking even than the Marion Crane one to me. Sometimes I even forget that it's in this movie. So yeah, I love it so much. I'm glad you guys have it on your list too.
Yeah, it's an honorable mention for me. I love the film. It's not my favorite Hitchcock by any stretch of the imagination, but it is one that I deeply, deeply respect, and it's one that I rewatch at least during this season every year, and definitely one of the pillars of the genre for sure. Yeah. And I'm glad to see that it's represented by three of y'all. Yeah.
Sophia? Quick thing about the Dan, you mentioned like that monologue at the end that people have issues with. And I feel like that comes up so often when like Psycho, it just had its 60th anniversary, but whenever people talk about it and it's sort of reevaluated, that comes up. And I always just think like for audiences in 1960, like they didn't have true crime podcasts. They didn't have like all of these Netflix shows about serial killers or crime. Like they needed that. So it's totally, I think, of the time. And I encourage people to not be too hard on it.
And they also like, if you really listen to it, like the audiences of the time, like they needed to know that like, he was not killing people because he was trans. Like he was genuinely fucked up. And this was another like side effect of that. Like it was important to people at the time, even though I can see how it can be very easily misread to something else. But yeah, like people always ask like the time travel question, like if you could time travel back to like this one moment, this is always mine. Like I want to see Psycho with like the first audience to see it.
Yeah.
Just to watch them.
Just to see how they all respond. Yeah. Tyler, your number 5?
So mine are not going to be ranked. I'm going to go in order. Yeah, I can't rank them. I don't really have like a.
I don't blame you. It's hard.
It's hard.
It's hard.
So I'm going to go in order of release date, going from furthest from here to now. It was actually already mentioned. Sophia brought it up before we really got going. One of my favorite movies is Saw. I'm a huge James Wan fan. This is actually one of the first horror movies that I really sat down and watched. My grandmother, when I was little, never listened to my parents when it came to don't let him watch this. So when I would stay with her, it would be a let's watch whatever you kind of want to watch. So we watched things like this. She took me to the theater when I was like 11 to see The Descent. But
oh my
Saw,
God.
I remember Saw was one of the first movies that showed me that there could be this big twist at the end. You know what I mean? That there could be something that just totally gagged you by the time the movie was over. And I think that because I was so young when I first watched it, it just had this big impression on me. And now I try to watch it every couple of years. I don't watch it every Halloween. But yeah, it's just something that when I think of horror movies, I think of James Wan and I think of this movie.
Yeah, I love that movie. I think it's.
I love that movie too.
Yeah,
too.
The surprising thing is, it's like that is a really great movie, and yet that series just goes completely off the rails. The more and more they went and go, and it's completely. It's a lot like the Insidious. It's a lot like the Conjuring films, where James Wan sets up this great concept, and then the Hollywoodization of it all, and the sequelization and everything just kind of, takes away the elements that really work. And I think Spiral, that film that came out a couple of years ago, whatever, tried to go back to that, but it doesn't have the freshness or the originality of that film that I really like. I don't know what everybody else thinks about Saw. I mean, Kevin, you really liked it.
I think it is insanely rewatchable. Yeah. And I think what largely makes it so rewatchable is it's nowhere near as gruesome as people think it is.
No.
Although the franchise later on very quickly becomes gruesome and exactly the way people think it is. But I think what's so great about the first Saw is it's so self-contained. It spends so much of its time in just that one dilapidated bathroom with Cary Elwes and Lee Winnell's characters. Of course, the movie like jumps back back and forth with flashback timelines and following a few other characters, but it's largely held by these two actors in Adam and Dr. Gordon in this one bathroom trying to figure stuff out. And like, it depends on my mood sometimes. Sometimes I watch it and I feel like very horrified about their situation. Other times I'm having so much fun because it feels like an escape room because they slowly figure stuff out in that room, you know? And I don't know, I get really emotional at the end because I think from a technical standpoint, you might not pick it up instantly, but you don't really ever get shots where you see both Carrie Elways and Leigh Whannell in the same shot until the end when they're like holding each other and Carrie Elways is saying like, I will come back for you, you know, and it's like, yeah, like it's interesting in these kinds of life or death situations, how a stranger, you know, could be someone who has contributed to ruining your life when you heard about why they're here, but then because of this very situation that you and that person have been put in together, they suddenly like they're all you have, if that makes sense. I think the two of them have such good chemistry, and just like what Tyler said, that twist at the end, it breaks you because first of all it's shocking, but I think by that time you're hoping for Adam to make it out, and unfortunately he doesn't.
Yeah, it's also a little bit of the James Wan formula that we get to see in things like Malignant and others, where it's like that twist is very, very campy and it's very silly, and but it also makes total sense in the context of the film. So it is that tap dance that I think James Wan is so perfect at as one of the modern helmers of great horror films. I think, the first Conjuring film is another one that I really like. The first Insidious film, I remember watching that. I think I was in college and that movie terrified me at the time. And Aquaman's a horror film to certain people. So there's a lot of different things out there.
I'm sorry. What is so scary about Jason Momoa shirtless?
There's nothing
at all.
Nothing
exactly.
At all.
Thank you.
I wish everyone could see Dan's face right now.
But no, that's a great pick. My number 5 is my only recent title that I have on my top 5. And I think that we all can agree that we remember the things that scared us in the theaters a lot, but we also remember at home, 1:00, midnight, watching something terrifying us and having that ability to be like, I can't go to bed. I can't do it. It's not possible. And a couple of years ago, that was me when I saw The Babadook, which is a movie that terrified the hell out of me when I watched it, because I had no idea what it was about. I just heard, you gotta watch it, it's scary. And I was just like, okay. And I had nothing else to do. And I was by myself in a house. And I was just house sitting at the time. I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch this. It's 12:30 at night. I can't go to sleep. And it was the worst decision I made for for weeks, because I kept thinking about like go to a bookstore and I was terrified. Or I had to, that movie is so great because of what a lot of horror movies are. Its sound work is extraordinary. It's Jennifer Kent as a director, just making it feel absolutely dreadful what is happening to this mother and son, having this child performance, which a lot of people can find annoying, but also it's completely terrifying. And makes you rethink your future if you want to be a parent. And there's a lot of things about this movie, but ultimately too, it really by the end turns into a quite touching and heartbreaking story about a family. And I can't think of another horror movie of recent memory that's been able to balance both its terrifying imagery and also have its sentimentality by the end. And I think that that's truly what's great about certain horror films, is being able to balance certain different things. Also too, like the scene where she's driving in the car and there's
Yep.
those editing bits that are just so extraordinary with the mirrors. I just, I know The Nightingale was like a rough experience for most of us, but I still really like that film a lot.
Yeah.
And I think Jennifer Kent is just someone that has so much potential going forward. But this film, it was between this and another film that was more of my childhood. And I went back to this one a lot because there are shots, there are images that just stick in your head. And so that's why I had to pick it. So it's The Babadook is my number 5.
And
Anybody else
Bessie
got it on their list?
Davis.
Oh, she's so good in the damn film.
My
So good.
God.
Oh, what a performance. Well, talking about, before there was Toni Collette, there was Essie
Mhm.
Davis, in my opinion.
I think so. One of the things that I love when it comes to horror is I love props.
Yeah.
And
Damn book.
the book in The Babadook is so iconic now. It's so creepy.
Who reads that to their child? What are you doing? I'm just sitting there like, what are you doing?
I mean, who watches a horror movie when they're house sitting though? That's another question.
Yeah.
Almost like everyone. They all. How many
that's
times
true.
do people
I would do
babysit
it.
and they were like, "I'll put a horror
Yeah.
movie on"? you
Yeah,
know?
I would do it. I mean, you technically, if you're babysitting, you should be watching The Thing from Another World instead.
Yeah, that's true.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I love. I also love The Babadook. I remember being really caught off guard for the first time by that ending,
Mhm.
thinking, "Wait, what just happened?"
Yeah.
And then it took me like a day, and I went, "Oh, that's what the movie is saying."
Yeah.
Wow, that is genius.
Mhm.
I
Right.
love that ending so much. My God.
Yeah. Also,
Yeah.
too, The Babadook, gay icon. So
I thought the Babadook was a bisexual icon.
still, we invite him and his boyfriend Pennywise into the
The
Into the
Babadook
fold.
is the B in LGBT.
There you go. There you go. All right. So we have Sophia's number 4, which is Psycho. So we're going to kick it back over to Dan. What is your number 4?
My number 4 is a film that it is the first horror film that ever made me cry.
Ooh.
And it also has one of the best jump scares that I have ever seen in any movie ever. And that is J.A. Bayonna's The Orphanage.
Ooh. Okay.
Good pick.
Yeah, that's a good. Pick.
That is a movie that is so creepy, and the setting of it, that orphanage. I love a good gothic haunted house, and the main set for this is a beautiful one, and also just the seaside location and the cinematography in it is gorgeous. The lead performance from Belén Rueda is stunning, and yeah, that ending, every time it makes me cry. Every time, I think it's so beautiful, and it's sort of like a big precursor to things like The Babadook and Hereditary, but this is like 10 years earlier, where it was really using horror to get at grief and that process and how we move through it and how we deal with death. And it, on top of that, still super fucking scary.
Mhm.
I remember this movie coming out like the year after Panton's Labyrinth.
Yes.
I felt like, oh my gosh, just dark horror fantasy is like doing so well.
Where it's at.
I watched this one in my dorm room freshman year of college with my roommates, and I remember also crying, being very moved by it, but also terrified. I still can think of images from just that first viewing alone. So I love this pick. And a lot of like international horror, I always encourage like people to look there, even though my list is mostly classics. I think there's so many international picks that are just incredible. This
The
is one of them.
number of films that I left off. Like,
Mhm.
and they're mostly all I'm just gonna have the one representative because there's too many to pick from. But like, yeah.
No, that's a great
We
pick.
could make a whole list of just Asian horror movies.
We could.
Oh yeah.
We could for sure. Kevin, kicking over to you. You're number 4.
My number 4 is a movie that shows just how much I would champion a filmmaker when they have a really compelling idea of creepy premise, but the creepy premise is really just there to serve a meaningful story. This movie inspired me on many fronts, on wanting to tell stories, on wanting to make movies. And it's funny because as a filmmaker is extremely hit and miss. They have made really great films and they have made absolute garbage before. So my number 4 is M. Night Shyamalan's Signs.
Yes.
Yeah, good.
So
Good
glad
one.
somebody put this on their list. This was that movie that I was toggling with the Babadook. So go ahead.
So that's the one that you were going
Yep.
back and forth.
Yep.
Okay, well, just out of my personal opinion, I prefer Signs over The Babadook, a movie I also really love.
Rude.
I think nearly everything on a technical level is perfect in Signs. The cinematography, the location with the cornfields, James Newton Howard's score. I think, like, I know everyone praises James Newton Howard for his work in The Village. I greatly prefer his work in Signs.
They're both great, though.
They are both great. But I think the music here in Signs is deeply unsettling. But by the end of the film, when the film approaches its last 20 minutes, it's just emotionally stirring. I think this is also M. Night Shyamalan's best film in terms of juggling tone, because I think a lot of his other films, he tends to wobble in terms of balancing that suspense and those moments of levity that to make you laugh, to make you like relax a little bit. But I think Signs is perfect. I think it has the perfect amount of awkwardness, and I think that also is contributed by Mel Gibson being a very good actor and giving a very good performance in the film, but Joaquin Phoenix giving an MVP supporting performance in that movie as well. And you want to talk jump scares, guys? You want to talk jump scares?
It's a good one. Classic.
There's a moment in this film where Joaquin Phoenix is watching a broadcast of something, and
My God.
And I don't think I've ever felt the amount of chills going down my spine when I first saw that moment. And frankly, I reacted the exact same way Joaquin Phoenix's character reacts to that moment. And to this day, it is one where if I see that image on the internet, the chills come back instantly, like just without context. If I see that image, it's just chills.
I just got them when you described that again.
Oh yeah, well,
it goes right in your head. You start thinking about it.
Well, there you go. But like, is it a movie about aliens? It is, but it is there to serve this story about this man who has lost his fate, and through this extraordinary extraterrestrial situation, managed to find this really beautiful way to regain that faith. And I think that's great. And I think that's what makes it very rewarding on multiple viewings. Mm-hmm. And I think it's his best film. Most people would say it's Sixth Sense, but I think Signs is M. Night Shyamalan's best film.
I'm a massive fan of M. Night Shyamalan, even the messy stuff, because I just think it's fascinating, some of the choices that he makes. Nobody makes out there, weird, bold, sometimes original takes or opinions like M. Night Shyamalan. And I think that whether you like his films or not, it's the kind of filmmaking we kind of don't get to see a lot, where directors mess around with different ideas and themes. And I think Signs, though, is his most put together film. I agree with you, Kevin. It is the perfect balancing. I mean, you mentioned the scene where Joaquin Phoenix gets with the television. I think of the knife under the door. And that slow moving knife, and it's just bone chilling what he's doing there. And I know I saw it in the theaters. My dad took me to see it in the theater
too,
and it scared the ever living hell out of me. But it's one of those, like, you can't look away. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's like when you eat something spicy and you're putting it and you're like, this is the hottest thing on the planet, but I can't stop eating it. You know, I can't stop consuming it because I want to see more of it. And I do that. You hit the nail right on the head. Like, Mel Gibson is very good in this movie. And weirdly enough, it's a relic way before his whole cancelization and everything. But Joaquin Phoenix is extraordinary as well too. I think that they both have great chemistry. I think the kids are really good in the film.
Mhm.
I think though his direction, the basement stuff at the end where there are sequences where you're completely in the dark and you're having to make that up as you go and you're just hearing sound. M. Night Shyamalan is one of the best directors in terms of using sound to absolutely scare the pants off of you. I love this film. And yeah, it was very close because it's like when you're a kid and you're seeing this in the theater, we all have this ability of like you're putting your hands over your eyes and you can't, but you're still looking, even though like it's not gonna do anything, you know. And yet he for all of our childhoods was like a guy that, you know, was a horror event filmmaker. I mean, The Sixth Sense was a phenomenon. This one was big too. Whether or not you like The Village or not is a conversation to have. And, you know, he's still scaring audiences. He's got a film coming out next year and the one in 2024 too. And so, yeah, but Signs is his best film for sure. Does anybody else have it on their list? Anybody else?
No, but it's a good movie.
I love this movie. I love it so much. Yeah. More M. Night, please. Love the guy.
More good M. Night, please.
Yeah, more good M. Night.
He just made a good movie. What was it last
No,
year?
he did not.
I think he has two good movies.
I mean,
And
a
they
really
were
good
both
movie
just
last year.
mentioned.
What was it? Old?
Yeah.
Old was last year? Yeah. That was good.
Old was
It
terrible.
was great.
I had a great time watching it. But
Talk
it's
about an
terrible.
explanatory twist at the end that doesn't
Yeah,
make
that's
sense.
not the
Yeah.
best part. But I do think, like, not to get into the old arguments, but it's like he has a little bit of those Signs beats there, I think, especially by the end with the beach scene with Vicky Krieps and Gil Garcia Bernal there at the end.
A queen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Can't wait for his new film. But Tyler, your next film.
So for my number 2, we're going to take about 5 years away from Saw. We're going to go to 2009. This is another movie I was still not old enough to watch, but I went with one of my best friends in high school. It was something my mom had to stop by on her way home from work and buy our tickets for us because I wasn't old enough to go in there.
Ooh.
Oh, I love it.
And it was just us in the theater watching Jennifer's Body.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
To start off, I think that anything written by Diablo Cody is pure genius. I think the screenplay is so funny and so real and so, for its time, I think it was so feminist, like just the way it was dealing with things.
Mhm.
But I love a good movie that makes me, when the gore starts happening, I like to not be able to look away. And that movie doesn't do it too much, but even in the scenes where, like, when Jennifer is like killing the gothic guy and she like breaks his hands or whatever, like, I like things like that. It's hard to look away, you know what I mean? And recent Emmy winner Amanda Seyfried is so good in this movie as Needy Lesnicki, who has the biggest crush on her friend. And I kind of see her as a queer icon, to be honest. So, but yeah, Jennifer's Body is it's an all-time favorite. And like I said, anything written by Diablo Cody, directed by Karen Kusama, I mean, could it get better?
And absolutely iconic Megan Fox performance. I mean,
Yes.
come on.
When she says, "I go both ways," about killing people, like,
when she sets her tongue on fire, like, come on.
It's one of those.
Yeah.
She really did that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
She's a real actress.
She is.
I saw this movie 5 times in theaters.
5 times.
So you're the entire ticket sale.
It is one of those great movies too that, and I feel like horror is especially this, and sometimes comedies too, where it gets reevaluated as time goes
Yeah.
on. These movies
Yep.
in this genre, I think a lot, take the time, or they're not appreciated by critics or maybe audiences or whatever, and then they go home and people catch them over the years or reevaluate them. So that is definitely one of those, and I'm glad that it was mentioned. Great job, Tyler.
Jennifer's Body, Criterion,
When?
I will write the essay.
Yes.
Yes.
This is also the perfect example of why we need more women who cover film writing reviews about horror movies,
Yep.
because men tore this apart and
Yeah, they did.
it was not necessary. They were
Yeah.
wrong.
They were very wrong.
Completely wrong.
Wrong.
Well, my number 4 is one that I expect to be on most of people's list. It's sort of a goat pick, I guess. It's Dan's background. It's the original horror slasher film, and that is Halloween.
Oh, wow.
I think that this movie, Sophia was mentioning this before we logged on. One of the more rewatchable films I think I've ever seen. I think these top 4 for me are very rewatchable. And the reason why I always go back to Halloween, besides it being iconic, besides the fact too, it's another one of those films where whether some good sequels are in there and some are completely not great, or reboots or Lego sequels or whatever the hell was going on with this new franchise now, all the trauma included and everything. I think that the original Halloween is scary because of the fact that it is grounded within a real reality. It, to me, is grounded within the fact that this could actually happen. And I think that to me sometimes is the scariest horror, especially in the modern era of, fantastical things happen. And I just talked about a cursed book showing up on a doorstep for a family, but this is literally just a serial killer going back home and murdering people. And it's also some of the best direction of all time, period.
Oh God, yeah.
A genre setting direction by John Carpenter, who is, I thought about putting The Thing on my list. I put that as an honorable mention. Only wanted to put one thing from John Carpenter too, because I think of Carpenter, I think of Hitchcock in this genre being the kings of it. And, obviously Jamie Lee Curtis is really great. The supporting cast is really good in this film, but it really is all about this now creature that is Michael Myers that has taken over our zeitgeist. But he is terrifying. And to put it in the context of the past, because we've talked about this with Psycho, my dad told me a story many years ago of when he first saw it. And he took a girl on a date, and they went to a midnight screening of this movie, which once again is a terrible thing to do in the 1970s. Okay. Well, there's a scene in the film where someone's in their car and Michael's in the back seat and drags him into the back and stabs him to death. So imagine dropping off your date at home and you got to drive across town after seeing this thing. My dad had to have the lights on in the car the entire time. And it's a terrifying thing because it's something that weirdly could happen and we don't think about it. And that's what I think makes true horror is, the things that are in our normal life that can come and turn around when you're in a theater or you're watching it at home. I think there's so many, like the way the camera turns around corners and the way that it just slowly lingers like you are Michael. It's a thing now that the genre has, and many directors have tried to do, but not as successfully, not as fresh and original as Carpenter ever did. So yeah, it's my number 4. And I really, really love this movie. Does anybody else have it on their list?
It's my number 3. It's another perfect movie.
Yeah.
There literally no flaws, 10 out of 10, no notes. The thing is that so many horror movies are described as nightmares. And for me, Halloween is more like a daydream for most of it. It has that sort of like dream logic, weightless camera movements, like you were talking about, the way it goes around corners and the killer's eye view is just. And yes, it is my Zoom background now. The scene of Michael Myers just like peeking around the hedges, like you never know where this fucker is going to show up. And it is constantly, he haunts the whole movie. And that score, another fucking classic horror score that is only, you know, often imitated, never duplicated. Sorry, Friday the 13th. And it's just, everything about this film heightens everything else, the experience of watching it. And yeah, I freaking love it. Every October, watch this movie. It's a perfect movie. And for him to have made it on the budget that he did, like, come on.
Yeah, I think that's what, so this is just outside of my top 5. It really should be in it because I do think you could make the argument that this is the best horror movie of all time. I feel like if you were to say that, I'm not going to dispute that. But I love how horror movies are often these success stories, whether it's like you make it for no money and somehow it makes so much money back, or all of these people tell you it can't be done, but somehow it is. Like that, I feel like comes up often in horror movies, but here, like it really is like the pinnacle of that happening. Also, 10 out of 10 title. Halloween, you know exactly what you're getting, and it really does take you on a ride. And I love when daytime scenes in scary movies are just as scary as the scenes at night.
Yeah, that was something that my dad told me about when I was young. My dad was like, you want to make a really good horror movie is if you can scare the audience during the day.
Yeah. Because then if you're scaring them, then of course that means that you got them when you go to the night sequences and everything else.
Exactly. Speaking of night sequences, someone did a tweet a day or two ago where they took one shot from Halloween and then the same exact shot that they're replicating in Halloween Ends, and the person who tweeted it was asking like, oh, can you spot the difference? And what was really funny was the overwhelming response of, yeah, the original one was way better lit. And no, but it was really funny, but it's so true. And like when you watch the original Halloween, I think the nighttime scenes, the way it's photographed, the way the camera frames things, the way it moves, I think John Carpenter plays with claustrophobia so well, because there's claustrophobia in the house, but then there's claustrophobia out in the open, right? You think Jamie Lee Curtis leaving the house and running to the house across the street would bring her to safety, but there is I think the way Carpenter makes the street and the neighborhood feel like its own void is so effective. And not every horror movie can really, really nail that. I can only pinpoint like a couple that capture that same similar energy of a home, like a neighborhood, feeling like it is claustrophobia of like an endless claustrophobia.
Yeah. And I love how he captures Michael walking. Yeah. Almost like he's not really in any hurry to catch her.
He knows that,
but you know, he can. Like that is so scary. And that scene that you're talking about, Kevin, when she's running across the street, you're just like, oh my God, he's going to get her. He has to. It's so
right. And then we also have the most iconic sit-up in movie history.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's just really so sad too, to put a last thought into it, is that how this movie, which does feel so stripped down and so I just, like I said, grounded earlier, has now turned into a supernatural being. I mean, he's pretty much like Jason and like, you know, what is that, Jason X, where he goes to space. I mean, we're pretty much at that point with Michael Myers, because nothing can kill him. I mean, I was like watching Halloween Kills, and they are beating him to death, and he gets up and just kills her. But I'm like, oh, come on. This isn't even like, this is furthest from the point of the original film in general. And it just, it's really sad to see something that is so well done, and Carpenter probably never thought it would get to this point, to now almost just feel like it's a joke. Like, people are tired of these movies, and I'm sure once it quote unquote ends, if it ever does, then, you know, we'll get a reboot in 5 years or whatever, but it'll never be as fresh or original. And it really should be somebody with a visual lens taking over this property. And I don't understand why directors who idolize John Carpenter don't try to tackle their own films like this, or even if you're going to remake properties, because we live in the world of IP, that they don't try to do their own special spin on it. Because I do think that there are ways to take this character into a different way than what David Gordon Green and Danny McBride have been doing, which I'm not the biggest fan of. So you know, it's one of those things that continues in the horror genre, where they just beat a dead horse until, you know, right into the ground, and then they continue to do it for another 6 years afterwards that it's already been in the ground. So but it's a classic nonetheless. Yeah, I know, guys. I don't care. I'm just saying my piece. So,
no, the best thing about Halloween, well, one of the best things, because everything about it is the best thing.
It's great.
But one of the best things about it is that, like, Michael Myers is completely inexplicable. He is the boogeyman. And I feel like every movie since has tried to make him explicable. They tried to explain how he can just, you know, get up and walk away and disappear and all this shit. And like, no, you try to explain him and you rob
try to make him into
everything that's scary about him.
Freddy Krueger almost. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
no,
he's not that. He's a man.
And it specifically annoyed me about Halloween Kills.
Yeah.
Like, that they just spent all this time just explaining Michael Myers. I'm like, no, he's scary because you can't fucking explain him.
Yep.
And so, yes, I am seeing Halloween Ends very soon. And
Same.
I'm both looking forward to it and
dreading
so scared.
Yeah.
I do have to say, like, just real quick, I do think the reboot trilogy of Halloween, there's a lot of ideas in it that I do really respect, even if the execution of it is botched. Like, for example, with Halloween Kills, I do like how they went towards how someone like Michael Myers would haunt everyone else in Haddonfield, even if they themselves didn't really experience it firsthand. I do think that is an interesting idea. I also do think that kind of fear, how that transforms into misguided mob mentality, is also a very interesting idea. Yeah. It's just there were other things about that film that did not work.
It's like terrible execution.
Yeah. I will also say that John Carpenter's score in the new films is very good.
Very good.
Always very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Sophia, we're getting into our top threes. So what is your number 3?
We are. So I'm going to preface this by saying that I am a person who finds comfort in horror movies. Like, they actually quell my anxiety. And there was something about, like, specifically seeing other people going through anxiety inducing situations that did have a clear endpoint that made me feel better about my own situation, specifically during COVID. So I would watch horror movies over and over and over again. And this movie became one that I would watch once or twice a month. This is one of my go-to comfort movies, and that is Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
Oh my God.
That's my number 3 too.
Really? Yeah. So the isolation, I feel like, that's an obvious theme there that I connected with in 2020, and why I really loved this movie. But I feel like it's just so cool to imagine a director like Stanley Kubrick, like, finding out that he was making a horror movie, finding out that he was making a Stephen King adaptation. I feel like so many Stephen King adaptations are botched, and many of the best ones are ones that are not horror, like Shawshank or The Green Mile. And Stephen King himself didn't like this movie, but I do not care. I like the book and the movie. I feel like they both have their own merits. And this film is, when it's so rare, I think, when you get an adaptation that is the director's clear vision, just saying like, yes, I'm taking things from the book, but I'm making it my own. And it has two of my favorite horror performances. I love when Shelley Duvall just goes for it here. And I feel like I need to shout her out specifically because she went through absolute hell on this set. And people still have the audacity to say that this isn't a good performance, when
the ultimate scream queen.
Yes. For me, this is just like the one. I mean, there are a couple of ladies in horror who I really love, but I just feel like she takes it there. I always think of her in that scene, in that on that grand staircase with the bat. And she's just like
so good,
sobbing and swinging at him. And when she discovers like the typewriter and how he hasn't been getting any work done whatsoever, I feel like she just delivers in this film. And also, seeing an actor like Jack Nicholson here too, like it's so cool. Someone who like is sort of the peak of the new Hollywood throughout the 70s, just saying like, I'm going to make a horror movie. So I love how that comes together. I think that the Steadicam is so iconic in this movie when Danny's on the big wheel.
I can't
Garrett
handle
Brown,
those shots.
like, it's so scary.
good.
And I love the sound. Someone mentioned sound work in horror and why that's so important, but a specific sound in this movie that I really love is when Danny is riding on the big wheel, and the sound, how it changes from when he's on the carpet to on the hardwood floor. Brilliant
So good.
stuff. Yeah, I love this movie so much.
Yeah, it's God, it's
Come play with us.
Yes, it's so
yeah, the twins.
I wouldn't even say it's like, for me, 100% scary. It's just so damn creepy, and it's it's one that has that lingering quality to it. And you think about it for such a long time, and it's one that everyone has dissected for so many years. And to hear you say comforting, Sophia, is interesting because it's one of the more uncomfortable films.
Yeah.
But
I'm
I
a
mean,
weird watcher, I know.
But
and right from the start, it's another incredible score.
Yeah. I mean, the score just
they're driving.
Yeah. I mean, it's all very uncomfortable. This family is very uncomfortable. The whole situation is very uncomfortable. And the job interview scene at the beginning too is such an uncomfortable, scene. Nicholson's extraordinary in the film. Yes, Shelley Duvall though is for me. I go back to that performance. I mean, an actress truly of that era. That was, I mean, rudely treated by the director and everyone on set, and sort of it broke her. This broke her at the time. She was working a lot with Robert Altman, and she was doing a lot of these very interesting to fantastic performances throughout her career. And this one is a swing for sure, but it's not one to give her a worst actress nomination and literally destroy her career. I mean, this was not well received. It didn't 100% destroy her career, but she did not get the same opportunities after this film the way that she would to get this movie. And I do think that it's one of those films that, fall into the supernatural. Obviously, that's what King is known for a lot, but it sets up its rules, I think, interestingly for certain characters, and then for others, they're wide open. You can interpret them however you want. I think that the just the cinematography and the camera movement by Kubrick in the film too was absolutely extraordinary. It's the stuff in the snow by the end. I can't get images out of my head. I mean, obviously it's like a GIF at this point of like Nicholson in the snow freezing to death. It's a really, really good movie. And I know that, was it Flanagan made the Dr. Sleep film that came out recently, and I enjoyed that film for what it was.
I kind of like Dr. Sleep.
I kind of liked it too.
I love Dr.
Sleep. I thought it was a good companion. I even think like the extended cut of that film too is a really It really bolts well with it, and it also fills in that same sort of tone. I think that the film and the book have this sense
exactly.
of
Not enough people give
and of the afterlife and souls and how we connect to them and our past and childhood and everything. It's a really extraordinary film, and that's someone too that I think of right now as a modern master, whether it's on the television scale or in the film scale, and that's Mike Flanagan. And I and Rebecca Ferguson in that film is just as good as as Shelley Duvall.
Iconic.
Just great performances in this sort of space. But Kubrick's film, I mean, some people consider it Kubrick's best film. I mean, some people considered every one of Kubrick's films to be his best film, to be fair. But I'm
personally a Barry Lyndon girl.
But it's what I just mentioned earlier about Halloween. It's a director willing to jump into the genre and create something new, even though it's an adaptation. It's completely a Kubrick film. I mean, there are so many burning images. I mean, Nicholson, here's Johnny bit. There's the elevators with blood. I mean, it's so much so that like it's ripped off in something like Ready Player One. I mean, like there's this is an iconic film. This is an all-timer. So, and I love it for many of the reasons Sophia said. Kevin, you were going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say that not enough people credit Mike Flanagan for what he did in Dr. Sleep, because he had to walk a very, very delicate tightrope in having that film feel like a Kubrick movie and a Stephen King movie.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy task.
I think King has come to appreciate.
No, for sure.
In both films now.
What I mean is
after he attempted to make his own version, and it was
what I mean is he needed to nail the narrative sensibilities of Stephen King, of specifically what Stephen King's trying to explore in that book, Dr. Sleep. But then he also needed to visually create the same kind of off-kilter atmosphere that Stanley Kubrick brought to The Shining, so that Dr. Sleep can truly feel like this companion film, this actual film that seems like it belongs in both. It's a very difficult challenge that I think only Mike Flanagan is capable of pulling it off, because I don't really think any other mainstream horror director today could do it as well as how Flanagan did it. But yeah, I remember showing The Shining to so many of my friends, and I remember like within the first 30 minutes, because the first 40 minutes or maybe an hour, the first hour, like nothing truly scary happens. But every time I show this movie to a friend of mine, they always say the same thing, which is they'll pause the movie real quick and they'll say something along the lines of, "So nothing scary has happened yet, but I'm very scared." I'm like, yeah, exactly, because it's all about Kubrick's ability to make something feel off about it.
Yeah.
Just from the opening credits, something feels horribly wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
But you can't put your finger on what it is.
Nope.
And that is what makes that film so like suffocatingly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Or if you watch it during COVID, extremely cathartic.
Yeah, I think off though is the perfect word, because even the interactions that Jack has, like they're just off, they're wrong, and it from the start. Like Grady in the bathroom, like that just takes it up a notch. Of course, like that woman in the bathtub, like I remember when I first saw that scene as like a 10-year-old and just being like, I am horrified. I never want to watch another scary movie in my life.
Not taking a bath either. Yeah, right. Kevin, you're number 3 now.
My number 3. Okay, so I needed to have a horror comedy on my top 5, and so I do think this qualifies as horror because it's quite gnarly and there are scares, but it's overall extremely funny, and I think this movie is objectively one of the most entertaining movies ever made, period, regardless of genre. So my number 3 is Tremors.
Oh,
It is.
Okay.
It was. It.
didn't
It's a
see that
movie-
coming. I did not see that coming. All right. Tell
It
us
is a
why.
movie that I think completely rests on this really silly, gimmicky idea. There's these giant creatures, they're coming from under the ground, they grab you, and we just follow this group of characters led by Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward. It's just about these people trying to survive and hold them off. And I think it is perfectly paced. It is, because of its simplicity, it's very well structured. I love how there's more than one of those things and how each one has its own thought process and they have to outsmart each one in its own way, and how each one dies differently. And so it's just, there is an unpredictability to it, and you're never quite sure whether you're feeling scared and tensed up or if you're laughing. And I think it finds an incredible balance between the two. It also has some of the most iconic lines ever. One of my favorite lines is when Kevin Bacon says, "I have a plan, we run," and Fred Ward says, "Running ain't a plan. Running's what you do when a plan fails." There's just it's just entertaining. It's a movie that I watch, like, I don't know, twice a year, maybe more. If any listeners out there, if you also really enjoy this movie, go buy the 4K release that Arrow Video has put out about a year or so ago. The transfer is great. It looks and sounds amazing, and it's a movie that just reliably entertains me every single time. So yeah, that's Tremors for you.
All right. I've never seen Tremors.
What?
You should watch it.
I really
You should, Ryan. You'd like
I know,
it.
I-
You should.
I know.
You'd like it.
I really would. It's probably my alley. Super silly and fun. Tyler, your next film.
So I'm gonna say this a pretty similar thing that Sophia said about her last pick, in that I like horror because it kind of calms my anxiety, because it gives me something to focus on. When my adrenaline's up like that, it's hard to be anxious, except if I'm watching a movie that I find to be about generalized anxiety, and that's exactly what It Follows did for me.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Just starting off, I can listen to that score at any given moment.
good.
It can be noon or midnight, and I am still going to be scared. I'm still going to be looking over my shoulder to make sure no one's following me. And when I think about that movie, the scene where they are all in the bedroom and they open the door and that huge man comes like trucking towards them, like, that truly is one of the scariest things I have ever seen in the theater. It stays with me. And I just think that movie has a lot to say. I actually toyed with either that one or The Babadook, since they're both about, in my opinion, about mental health issues and stuff like that. But this is the one I went with because I related to it a little bit, and it still gets me every time I watch it.
Oh.
Yeah.
I love that movie, and the thing I love about it is, you're right, it's like kind of like generalized anxiety. The metaphor of that monster is so open. It could be about anything you want. I know most people see it as an STD allegory, which, sure, absolutely, but the bottom line is it's fucking terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
It could be anyone coming from anywhere, and you don't know. All you know is it's going to get you, unless you pass it on to someone else, at which point, if it gets them, then it'll start coming back after you. So you're never ever safe, and that's fucking dangerous.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We were talking about Halloween earlier, and I was saying about not that many filmmakers know how to capture the void of being outside, and Carpenter is among a couple others who really, really nails that. Basically, when I was talking about that earlier, I was thinking about It Follows, because I think It Follows, David Robert Mitchell's direction, has so many really, really good callbacks to John Carpenter. And the thing is, he's not stealing what Carpenter does. It is both an homage, but it is also, David Robert Mitchell understands what is it about that camera movement that makes us so afraid of being out in the open. And I think it is the perfect fit for a movie like It Follows, because it's a movie where you're never safe, even if you're on the run. So it's a movie about claustrophobia out in the open, you know? And also another thing that I said earlier, that my dad said, that it is a horrifying, terrifying movie, and most of it takes place during the day.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I think It Follows was the movie that made me really understand why what makes being stalked so terrifying. It's something that, like, you know, you read about, you have friends, colleagues who tell you about their experience. You read stories online about it, and I've never experienced it before, but I can say that the way It Follows is directed, it gives me a taste of what that feels like, and it's not nice. It is not nice at all. Yeah. I actually cannot. I love the score, but I actually cannot physically listen to the first track of that score, which is titled Heels. That track makes me way too uncomfortable. I actually cannot listen to that track from start to finish.
I like this movie. Oh, sorry, Sophia. No, you go.
It's okay. I love this movie too. One thing that I remember when I saw it in theaters when it came out was that I was so unsettled, and again just felt off, because there wasn't a clear time period. At first I felt like, oh, okay, this is like a 70s throwback, and then you would get cues like, oh, this is modern, this is happening right now, but there is never a clear place and time that is really established to orient you. So everything sort of feels like it's existing, yes, as part of the real world, but also almost like it's on a separate plane. And that's really hard for any director to achieve, but I feel like is essential if you do want to create what I think this movie does really well, which is a sense of overwhelming dread. Movies that have like dread at the center, like, I love them, but those are the ones that get under my skin and stay with me longer than others.
Yeah. Also too, I like the film a lot. I like David Robert Mitchell as a director. I liked Under the Silver Lake, which is another film that is weird and twisty in its own way. Yeah, I'm sorry, Sophia. I'm just saying we just don't need to do that today. We don't need to fight.
Talk
about that movie. It's a good movie. Good movie. I'm curious what he'll do next, because it feels like that movie might have broke him, or and that he's not done something in 4 years. But it is an impressive horror film. I think the ending I think it wraps up a little bit too quickly, or too nice and neat in It Follows. But overall, the film, it's a really good movie. I really like it. Okay, number 2 films. So Sophia, back to you. You're number 2.
I really don't think there's anything else to say about this film, because everything about it maybe has already been said by people before, because this is sort of the grandfather of horror here. It's The Exorcist. It's my number 2. This movie scares me more than any movie that's ever been made. And I think it's because Friedkin, who loves like this documentary kinetic style, he takes this film so seriously. And because of that, like, that's what to me makes it the scariest movie of all time. And it shocks the audience, but it does it with so much purpose. Like, this movie doesn't feel empty or cold, or like it's just shocking you to shock you. It gets under your skin in this very real way. And I love that it makes you feel high. Like, I love when horror movies give you that sort of high when you're watching them. On a good day, any horror movie can do that. But this one is so provocative, because it makes me feel like I am this lowly human and anything can happen to me at any time. And it might not have to do with anything I do. It could just happen to me one day. And that is so scary. I love the music, the tubular bells here, iconic when we see Ellen Burstyn walking. So great performance from Ellen Burstyn in this. But my shining star actually is Jason Miller as Father Karras. I think he's brilliant here. I love him. I think that every scene about his mother, oh my God, like that is almost more terrifying to me than any of the scenes with Reagan in the bed. So yeah, it's iconic for a reason. This, Dan, so you mentioned earlier, like if you could go back to any moment to watch a movie with an audience, this would be mine. Like 1973 Christmas, getting in that line outside of the theater with everyone because they had heard it was the most shocking, horrifying experience. Like I would want to go back to that.
Interesting.
Yeah. No.
My one of my film professors did a masterclass session on Halloween night where all we talked about was The Exorcist. And he gave a very specific lecture about The Exorcist, which is how William Friedkin directs the characters going up the stairs into Reagan's bedroom. And he went through the entire movie to show every single occurrence of that. And by the end of the film, I think the tally went to between 12 and 15 times the film shows a character going up the stairs and entering Reagan's bedroom. And each time it is shot differently and directed differently. Mm-hmm. And each time it evokes a different effect. Sometimes it is extremely frantic and rushed because, for example, it's like the scene where the mother runs into the bedroom and then everything is just moving, like all the furniture is going to shit. It's shot frantically. It's shot with close-ups. But then you watch the one with where Max von Sydow shows up for the first time when he and Jason Miller enter the bedroom. It's like shot over the shoulder, over Max von Sydow's shoulder to show Reagan, and Reagan is like staring down at him, and so it's framed like a climactic showdown, whereas the final time they show someone going up the stairs, it was Jason Miller going up the stairs, and it is a wide shot where the camera doesn't even move and we just watch him slowly go up the stairs, and it's like a moment of defeat, or like there's like a looming regret, like this is something that I must do now, it's the only way to save her kind of thing. And it's just so delicate, and every scene there's so much care put into performances, put into the technicality of how the movie's put together. It's just yes, everything that's been said about it has already been said.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too that you mentioned like the different ways that he shoots the characters going up the stairs, because I think what people think of now when they think of this movie too is that finale with those stairs in Georgetown. I mean, when I lived in DC, like with the big stairs outside of the house, when I lived in DC, I would go visit them every Halloween. It was like a fun little tradition that my friends and I would do. They're still there. You can go see them. But yeah, I love the direction here too.
I feel like the other thing that everyone thinks about is the crab walk down the stairs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Which is so freaking good. I love this movie. This was one of my runners up. I think it just, the way everything feels when you get into Reagan's bedroom, it's like it's a completely different movie almost from what's happening outside. And I think it's so strong, and exactly what you were getting at, Sophia. Like, I am a puny little human, and there is so much outside of my understanding that who knows. And like, you feel for Reagan, like this poor child just getting torn up from the inside, and you really do feel like her soul is in danger. And I mean, can we get an honorary Oscar for Mercedes McCambridge?
Oh my God.
Please.
The voice.
Your mother sucks cocks in hell. I love it so much. She's so good. And if it's so interesting, because I feel like if anything about this movie was off even the slightest, it could have tilted into camp very, very, very easily. But Friedkin is a freaking master.
I have seen The Exorcist 167 times, and it keeps getting funnier every single time I see it.
Yeah.
It's a great movie.
God.
It's a great pick.
Great movie.
Dan, you're number 2.
So Sophia was just talking about that feeling of overwhelming dread that you get watching movies, and like the best horror movies achieve that. And my number 2 definitely achieved that. Okay, we're gonna go on a little Golden Girls trip. Picture it. 1999. People have been talking about this little no budget movie that, and it really happened. They found this footage and you can go online and you can read about it. My whole family, because it's rated R, but there's no gore. It's fine. We can all go. Whole family, mom, dad, younger sister, go to the theater to see the Blair Witch Project together. We get back from the movie. It is late at night. It's dark out. It's garbage night. We have to take the garbage out from our garage out to the end of the driveway.
It's garbage day.
It took 4 of us to take out one garbage can because our house, there was woods in our backyard was all woods. It was dark out. It was creepy.
Oh, damn.
None of us.
No, it was like, nope, never doing this, never doing
so
trash
scared.
night.
We were every single one of us was scared shitless by this movie. And it really, you see nothing. And that's what's so freaking scary about it. You see nothing, but you see how everyone is reacting, and it feels real. And yeah, of course, and even then, we all knew it was fake, but it's so easy to go along with it because, yes, found footage had been done before, but it had never been done like this and this effectively. And yeah, the marketing campaign was brilliant, but the movie had the goods to back it up. It's still one of the scariest movies I have ever seen. I have actually never watched it since because it scared me so deeply, to my core. And I think it's because it does this little bait and switch where you think it's about one thing and then you get to that last sequence and you're like, oh no, it was that other thing. Which made it even worse. That final sequence in the house is just, it's traumatizing. Okay. It's traumatizing.
That's a good pick, Dan. That's a good pick. I have not seen the Blair Witch Project.
Wow.
Never.
I haven't
Oh
either,
my
Ryan.
God.
That's one of my embarrassing blind spots in the horror genre. Yeah.
Do you do well with found footage horror?
Not really. It's like the one gimmick I can't get into.
This
and
is the one though.
It is.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing.
think.
It's the one, but then also I've had some people that have seen it in my life recently over the last couple of years. I'm like, yeah, it's not that great. You don't need to catch up with it. And then the bad sequels have come out and everything. And I thought I was gonna maybe I'll go because the Wingard film came out a couple of years ago.
Right.
And I thought, maybe I'll go, maybe I'll watch it. And I never had the burning passion to press play on that. And so, but maybe because, and maybe it is a movie of its time or a relic of its era, but or maybe it's also one of the more terrifying films of all time, and I've just never gotten around to see it because I'm a wuss. Either way, we'll never know. But yeah, I need to probably get around and just watch it just to cross it off for sure. I feel like everyone's.
I don't think it's highly rewatchable, but I did watch it again last year for the first time since I watched it at a sleepover when I was in 5th or 6th grade, and it destroyed me.
Really good sleeper movie.
It feels like a movie though. It like Dan, like you mentioned, it feels like a movie though of your adolescence, of one of its time, in which
I-
it just scares the
yeah.
pants off of you, because when you're younger, your imagination is running wilder. And for
Mhm.
something like that, it really, you're probably more terrified at watching that movie younger than you are probably older, I guess. Because
It holds up though. I will say
Yeah.
it does
Alright.
hold up.
It does definitely feel like one of those things where it was such a cultural moment, that
yeah.
movie,
Of
that
the-
like
yeah.
it's hard to recreate that now, like the
No.
level of hype and the level of like belief that people had in that movie.
Yeah,
And like even
it's-
because like
yeah.
I had my Entertainment Weekly subscription,
Oh,
and
yeah.
like so like
We all
I
did.
knew that it was not actually real, but it is so easy to buy into it
Yeah.
by how they set it up in the movie. It's really fucking great.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, it's one I'll cross off soon. Dan, I promise.
Please do.
Kevin, you're number 3, or
Mm.
you're number 2. Sorry, we already did your number 3.
Mm.
You're number 2.
My number 2, I have to go with a horror film that unsettled me and chilled me, but also really warmed my heart and really moved me, because
Paddington 2.
because at because at the heart of it all, it's an intimate relationship between these two characters, and I think this is the right way to do it. My number 2 is the 2008 Swedish film Let the Right One In.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
I love it.
That's a good one.
I think of the horror movies that have a really good story and are driven by the emotional turmoil within the characters, I think this is right up there as one of the best. It is a film about loneliness. It is a film about companionship, and about these two kids who, even though their parents and their guardians are around, they are so clearly on their own, and they only have each other. And it's a film about the two of them like coming together, understanding each other, and really seeing one another for who they are. Meanwhile, it's also a vampire movie, so it's very bloody and gory at times. But underneath all of that, there is a tragedy to it. There is a horror to it, especially when you think about what the ending means for the lead character. But it's also so beautiful because it's written in a way, you're guided by these character motivations and what these two people have been through, that by the time you get to that ending and these characters make certain decisions, you understand why they made it, and you understand, even despite the horrifying or dreadful thing that will eventually happen, you feel for these two people in their temporary happiness and their temporary joy. Meanwhile, it's so beautifully shot. It's so beautifully scored. It's a movie that feels so cold, and that's not just because of the not just because it's snowing during the movie, but I think that coldness really contributes to the isolation that these characters go through. And I think it's a testament to the script and the director, Thomas Alfredson, for the film to warm your heart despite having a film being so visually cold. And so that's my number 2 pick.
And the remake is pretty good too.
The remake's pretty good too.
Yeah. Tyler, you're number 2, or your second to last pick, since you're not ranking.
Yeah, mine will be just second to last. So I'm gonna follow in a couple of footsteps. I'm gonna follow Kevin's lead and picking an international film, and I'm going to follow the ongoing thing that we've been doing about dread, because I feel like that sometimes dread is worse than being outright terrified. Fear of the unknown, something you can't really see, like Blair Witch Project, is something that really scares me. So, and Ryan, I think, mentioned at the beginning of this episode that those movies that we watch at 1 a.m. alone can sometimes be the scariest ones. And so when I watched the Austrian version of Goodnight Mommy, that film took me apart,
Man,
put me back together, creeped me the hell out. And it was just a movie where the entire time, you can't see this woman's face. You don't know what's happened to her. You don't know all you can follow really are these two twin boys and what they're experiencing. And that just creeped me out. God, it creeped me out. But it's one of my favorite horror movies because of that. I haven't watched the new remake with Naomi Watts. It looks similar. I don't know if it'll have the exact same amount of dread, but I think that if anyone's wanting something that doesn't outright terrify you, but just gives you this sense of you don't know what's coming, that's a good film to watch. And it's my second to last.
Tyler, you don't have to watch the new one for one simple reason only. The new one is framed in a way so that only the mother seems creepy, whereas the original one, the twin boys are arguably creepier than the mom.
Mhm.
Yes.
Again, children, just the worst.
Yeah.
and it's funny because the whole plot of that movie is something's wrong with mom, but what makes that movie so creepy is you're forced to follow two people who are also very creepy and twisted, and there's something totally wrong with them, Yeah.
No, it's a good pick. It's a good pick. My number 2 is I'm probably gonna get flack from all of you about this, but when I saw this as a kid, it did truly terrify me, and I think that the film is less scary now because I've seen it so many times. But it is the tagline of the film is that you can't hear people scream in space, and that is Alien. Like the original Alien for me when I was a kid. I saw that film, and the way Ridley Scott, it's another director trick, just like John Carpenter, the way that Ridley Scott lingers down these ever long hallways and uses sound throughout this entire film. This movie is a masterpiece. It is a movie of just it's a haunted house movie inside a spaceship. What's so crazy is this little thing that bursts out of a chest grows exponentially to the point in which it is an unstoppable force, and it picks off each character one by one, and they all have their motivations of survival, and it's all of our emotions that we would feel when we're trying to survive. You have this corporation aspect of it, trying to save this alien for preservation. You have just getting the hell out of there. You have, the functionaries at low-level positions that didn't sign up for any of this. And it has obviously the introduction to one of the most badass characters in all of cinema, which is, Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver, who's extraordinary. And also too, I think we sort of forget that the fact that she's really a supporting character for most of the film until the second half.
Yeah.
Part of this, and it's really an ensemble piece until the final 30 minutes of the film, where then it solely becomes her. I think that all the things that Ridley Scott himself has tried to recapture in his re-examining of this world with Prometheus and Alien Covenant, movies that I don't hate, but I don't love them because they'll never get back to this moment. This is an essential film, one of the great films of all time, because of the fact that it asks so many questions, but then it also says, you know what, about those questions, why don't you save them for later? The people are getting killed left and right, and it's terrifying. All right. And this thing's coming from up top and below and around the corner, and you never know where it's going to be. And obviously it's expanded upon in Aliens and Alien 3 and all these other films, but the movie is essentially just a stripped down survival film. And it's terrifying because, most films when you see as a kid, you see in space, it's pretty safe and it's pretty cool. And, there's like Star Wars is the perfect example for like a kid to see a movie and be like, oh, space is great. Isn't it great? And then you see this movie and you're like, nope. Never going to be an astronaut. Never going to do anything in space. Don't want to touch space. If you take me to NASA, I'm literally going to cry all the way there. Not gonna happen. It's a wonderful film. Ridley Scott's best film, I think, and just a ground piece of cinema. So yeah, that's my number 2.
Another perfect movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One
I
of
would
my
have
runners
included
up.
it. Yeah, I would have included it if I fully thought it was horror. I have trouble with this one and considering as a full horror movie.
Yeah.
I think of it just as a sci-fi piece.
That's fair.
With horrifying elements. So I love it. It's an all-timer for me too. I mean, this is in my dad's like top 5 of all time, just in general of movies. So much so. And I loved when I was little, like I wanted to watch it, but couldn't. Like this was when I had to save because it was a masterpiece.
Yeah.
But I had a little xenomorph
Yeah.
action figure
Oh
that
my
I would
God.
play with when I was like 6 years old. I'll have to send the picture to you guys. It's very
Please.
weird and bizarre, but yeah, I would play with the little xenomorph
Hell
all the
yeah.
time. So I do love Alien.
Yeah.
Alien was my first R-rated movie.
Oh, really?
Ooh.
Yeah, and I remember
What a first.
And I remember thinking the alien is so cool.
Yeah.
And actually the part that creeped me out the most when I first saw it was the whole thing about Ash being an android.
Yeah. That's terrifying too when you don't see that coming for
Yeah.
how that they've
that
used
was
that
the-
as a twist 7 more times, but in the franchise.
That was the part that creeped me out the most. And I remember telling that to my uncle because my uncle took me to like a video rental store. It's like, all right, like pick your first R-rated movie, right? And I remember afterwards talking to my uncle saying like, is it weird that the thing that creeped me the most in Alien was not the alien?
It's because human beings are the worst and always are.
It's true.
All right, we're at our number ones. So Sophia, kick it off to you. Number 1 favorite horror movie. What is it?
Yeah. Speaking of human beings being the worst, this movie really, that is the thesis.
I know what this is. So
This is also one of my favorite movies, period, not just in the horror genre. And that is Rosemary's Baby.
Yes.
Like, I think this is one of the greatest films ever made. It is note perfect. I think that every performance is incredible. Every character is just so specifically rendered. And I think about every shot choice often, but I really do think that the reason why I picked this one and why I like it so much is because I do think it is the scariest movie ever made about being a woman in this world. I think that so many directors have tried it and are still trying it, but have really failed it because they'll all, I feel like, always fall short compared to Rosemary's Baby. I feel like the ceremony scene in particular is just so terrifying and devastating and also beautiful in a horrendous way. And just seeing how complicit Guy Woodhouse, played by John Cassavetes, what he does to her and how narcissistic he is. It's just so perfect. I feel like I'm failing to like find the words to describe it because I love it so much. But Ruth Gordon as Minnie Castavets, I mean, just like that perfect sort of eccentric neighbor who you might not want to let in, but who lets themselves in anyway. And Mia Farrow also, I mean, one of the greatest performances in a horror movie by an actress, maybe in any movie by an actress. I think in order for this movie to work, you have to believe her every step of the way and you have to feel for her every step of the way. And here you do. And living in New York, this is a great apartment building, by the way, like the Dakota. I love this apartment.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, like I'm like, can I move in here despite
Please.
everything that's happening? But I think it does capture that sense of horror of actually living here or living in any sort of city where it's like you don't have that space to like allow yourself like any sort of freedom. Like your neighbor who lives right across the hall from you or who you can hear through the walls, they
Right.
could end up upending your life very easily. So I love it. It's my number 1.
So good, so entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
And partially because Ruth Gordon is just so much fun to watch. Like
Just
you
so much,
know,
period.
she's pulling one over on
Mm-hmm.
poor little Rosemary, but like she's so much fun. The way she's like licking her fingers whenever she eats, like love her. And like also not gonna lie, but like if I was married to John Cassavetes in this movie and I found that he, sold our baby to the devil I'd be like, okay.
Yeah, I'd be like, I'll stay.
Like,
Sure.
yeah, like I mean, yeah, just can the next one be real?
Yeah.
Please? Like
It's the dark hair and the sweaters.
Get
the
like a
brooding.
do-over.
that
It's all
chin.
right.
Oh
Yeah.
my god, that jawline. What a beautiful man.
Great pick. Great pick. Dan Bayer, you're number one.
Okay. So I cheated a little.
Here we go.
Because this is one of those cases where I think that there was an older horror film that was remade not that all that long ago, and both films are incredible. They're both masterpieces as far as I'm concerned, but they are each completely different takes on the same material. My number one is both versions of Suspiria.
I knew that's where it was going.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Love.
good.
The Argento is just like pure cinema from the very first frame. The colors, the that were so giallo, the blues and the reds, and it just nothing has ever been more blue or red than this movie. And that score, that goblin score, I'll hear in my nightmares for like all the years to come. It's so good, and it just pure horror, and I love that movie for the aesthetics of it. Now Luca Guadagnino's version,
Yeah.
it resonated with me very, very deeply as a former dancer. My sort of line on this is like Black Swan is a kind of horror movie about the mind of a dancer, and Suspiria is about the body of a dancer, being in a dancer's body. And I'm sorry, that scene where Dakota Johnson is dancing her audition and you have poor Olga getting
oh god
torn apart in the other room. I literally, it was like the standing ovation in the theater. The editing, the sound work, the best sound mixing of that year, or like any year of the 2010s, frankly. And I love Tom York's score.
God, that score.
Yeah,
I absolutely
Great song.
love. Oh, God, so good.
Yeah.
I love the themes that they added about being in Berlin and how art was repressed and molded to be a very specific thing under the Third Reich, and how that has left scars, and how women had to band together and rise above and push their art forward. I think it's so beautiful. And that movie, like Kevin was talking about earlier, it got me surprisingly emotional at the end. What they did with that, I think the giant finale set piece, red sequence is, I don't know that it entirely makes sense, but also I do not care, because it, again, like pure cinema. And then the actual ending is, I get really emotional, and because it turns out that the movie was really about like this sort of, and accepting death and accepting the end, and I wasn't expecting it, and knocked me for a loop. It is certainly, I think, less of a horror movie than the original Dario Argento Suspiria is, but to me it still is a horror movie, just an unnaturally kind of sedate and meaningful one. And I cherish the experience of watching both of those movies.
I love that movie. I just remember it's one of those movies, like the Lucas version, just like it's long, but it just washes over you, and you get sucked in just like the original. And yeah, I want to watch them both right now. I've really wanted to watch Suspiria, the 2018 one, for a while, just because I remember watching it and it's so much to take in. But then by the end, you're just like, wow, what a rush. We don't get movies like that anymore. So
Nope.
Yeah, it's a good one. That's a good pick.
Thank you.
Kevin, your number one?
Oh, yeah. So for my number one, there was no competition. Like I had to go with the movie that scared me the most, down to the core, down to the bone, the movie that scared me the most. And it's funny because I think the stuff that scares me the most is supernatural stuff, but specifically how the supernatural makes the human feel so powerless and so confused, like what's going on. And the only thing you know is that you got caught up in something that is completely beyond your control. And there's something extremely dreadful about that and just terrifying about that. And so this is a movie that deeply creeps me out, but it's also a movie I love so much, and that whenever I talk to someone who has never seen it, I get the most excited to want to show this movie to someone. It's an international film, and it is the pinnacle of Asian horror. And so my number one is Ringu.
Yes!
The original Japanese Ring. And listen, this is a movie that has already spawned remakes and sequels. It's like so popular now in our culture. It gets made fun of a lot, and I totally get it. And a lot of the parodies are very funny. But what the original Ringu did was this dread and fear of technology and something that is alien to us invading into our space and our home in a way that we don't understand. And the way it invades and infects us is so slow compared to, like it's not like a force that just comes at you relentlessly. No, it takes its time. There's a window of you're going to die in 7 days, and you don't even understand why. Like all it is I saw this tape and I don't even understand what's happening in the tape. It's just full of subliminal images, and you can't make sense of it. And I think that's what a lot of the best horror films are, is that it's that real fear of, I don't comprehend what this is, and for some reason it's the thing that's going to kill me. On top of that, I think the way this original film is directed, I think every human character in this, there is also something very off and very wrong about them. Characters would walk into rooms or suddenly enter frame with no warning. In any other movie, their appearance would have been a jump scare, but it isn't. Hideo Nakata would just cut to that character and there's no reaction. Like they show up as if they just like magically appeared in frame. And if handled by a less sensitive director, it would be a jump scare that would suddenly release all the suspense and tension that you felt throughout the film. And the thing is, by the time you get to the iconic TV scene, what a lot of people don't know is that scene actually happens at the very end. And it's a scene where narratively it's pulling the rug out from under you. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure plenty of horror fans have seen that scene before, plenty of times on YouTube, and it's creepy. It's unsettling. I get it. But when you watch that scene with the movie in full and you understand the context of this scene happening, it's the most terrifying thing in the world. But it hypes me up so much. It's everything I love about horror, and it's exactly the thing that I want to show to someone. Like, this is so fucked up, this is so creepy, and isn't that good? Isn't that great? And so there was no competition.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I like that movie. I don't like the remake.
I like both. They're both
Yeah.
good.
I can't.
The thing
stand
that makes
remake.
it one of my favorite movies is that like it is, I mean, the balls on a horror movie to suggest that the actual act of watching it may kill you.
Yeah.
That is the most dangerous thing, and I love that it's like baked into that conceit, and it's so good. I think that both the original, I saw the American version first, and then like after like pirated the the original like with friends. This was very, very early days. The internet was the Wild West. And it
Still
we
is.
were and we had all seen the original, and we were watching and it's so interesting because like it's not a like shot for shot remake, but they're so similar. Like it, I feel like Gore Verbinski really got that feeling of dread that Hideo Nakata was getting at in that movie and the aesthetics. I totally agree, Kevin. It's great.
Shout out to the score by Kenji Kawai in
So
the
good.
original film. It's so good. It's skin crawlingly like suspenseful, and at the same time, the melodies in that score they feel so somber and melancholy, and I think it works so well when the characters are trying to figure out the backstory of like how this came to be, plus how what these human characters are dealing with in their own personal lives. And I think the reveal at the very, very end, like how to stop this, which everyone already knows, that you have to pass it to someone else, kind of like It Follows that we talked about earlier. I think what made that reveal work so effectively in Ringu is it really shows again how powerless we are, that we can't figure this out, that we can't beat it, and that the only way we can save ourselves from it and survive this is to doom someone else. This idea that we have to doom each other so that we can survive is something that is very terrifying, and it's a dreadful idea to think about, and it's a dreadful note for the film to end on, but it gives me so much life as a horror fan and as a film fan.
Also love that like in horror movies, even investigative journalists do the stupid thing. Like I love it. Like it's her job to be an investigative journalist. She is smart. She does research, and she still does the stupid thing.
I'm gonna watch the tape. Yeah. Tyler, your last pick here.
My last pick actually might also be my number one. It's the horror film that I'm most obsessed with. I will preface it by saying it is a horror drama. When I originally heard about this movie, I don't know about you guys, but when I hear that at film festivals in Europe, people are fainting and people are vomiting and people are just getting up and leaving, that has my full attention. So everyone, I love Julia Ducournau, and everyone loved Titan last year, but I am obsessed with Raw.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I think Raw really delivers not only just full gross out scares, but I think it's one of those films that really dives into how scary it is to transform into something else, to be somebody else. And I think that film really also has a lot to say about female body image and problems with eating disorders, things like that. But like I said, I think that the fear of transformation is something that the main character goes through. And it's so eye-opening. And it was obviously before Titan. I watched this one years ago, but I just think this is a masterfully made film. Very rewatchable in my opinion. And yeah, this probably is my number one.
Yeah, I love that movie.
It's amazing. It's amazing how for a film like Titan, which was about unconditional love, that Julia Ducournau explored that already in Raw. It's just told through this lens of sisterhood and growing pains and coming of age. And I'm a sucker for horror movies that use their horror elements as a metaphor or as an idea to elevate a human experience that the characters go through. And so I just love how her appetite for flesh is taken metaphorically and literally around the same time. Like she discovers like her sexuality and her identity, and the movie's saying like, yeah, why don't we take that literally and create this gnarly but empowering experience. Yeah, I love Raw.
Yeah, I love that movie too. I love Titan. I think Ducournau, the way that she uses the horror genre to embody these really human stories are just she's one of the best doing them today. And that's a great number one.
She's just a ferocious director, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The way she approaches things, she's very aggressive about them, and her direction is just so precise. And it just, I don't know if these films would work without her.
Yep. Let her have all the money.
Literally, let's do it.
Yeah, just give her like $200 million.
Give her everything.
Give her everything. For my number one, no one's mentioned it. It's kind of great. And it's my horror comedy on the list. It's the one that, like, when I watch this movie, I just have the best time with. And it's also just someone that Sophia knows this, Eric knows this. I think Tyler and Dan know this about me as well. I love it when a director gets their full-on passion project. They get to make something that they've been dying to make of. And they didn't and this director didn't necessarily get to do it the first time. So he remade his own film and made it even gnarlier and crazier and funnier and gorier and everything. And that is Sam Raimi's Evil Dead 2. It's a movie for me that I just absolutely love to my core. It is essentially, he remade his own movie and doubled down on it. And what's so great about it, besides Bruce Campbell's wonderful performance, I mean, obviously, like Army of Darkness is that's a pure comedy, but Evil Dead 2 is one of those where everything I love about Sam Raimi is full in force. You got this gnarly action. You've got this true master of suspense, I think, too, as well, with these editing choices that, you know, he is a staple of doing these quick, fast editing cuts that are throughout the film. You have the whole beginning basically be a full-on hilarious, gory deconstruction of his first film. And the fact that this is a guy that the first time, if you watch the first Evil Dead, that is a serious ass movie. That is a like just straight up horror movie, and it's fine, but it's not what Sam Raimi has known to be since,
right? And
is not what he really wanted to do. He wanted to make something fun and something campy and have some bite to it, as well as a wink to the audience. And that is what a horror movie should be sometimes too. It shouldn't just be, what I think the first film is, which is kind of dreadful and really just kind of like, okay, yeah, we're going to do this. And it feels very by the numbers, and it has its own style to it, but there's not the passion that I think Evil Dead 2 finds, or even Army of Darkness, or what he's, made ever since out of a career. Because, I think of Sam Raimi as somebody that is very, very highly influential in the modern blockbuster era. I mean, the Spider-Man films that he made have been the template now, I think, for a lot of other blockbusters, including obviously superhero films in general. And what I love about directors of that time is they were mostly horror directors that got to take their stabs at making action films or dramas or whatnot. And like, think of like Peter Jackson with Lord of the Rings, before that he's making like Heavenly Creatures, or think of Raimi, and then he goes to Spider-Man. But with Evil Dead, it's weird too, because the first one flopped. He should have never made this movie. They never wanted him to make this movie, and he made it. And it still wasn't a success. It still was the word of mouth. It was the rewatchability at home. It's this cult classic that is built into a classic. And I love it so much. It's just one of those I put on and I have a blast with every single time. and it's deeply hilarious as well. I can't stress that enough how funny it is. But it's just a wickedly good little film. And so I don't know. Have you all seen it? Have you guys
Love it?
Yeah.
Love it. Sam Raimi, I think, is like one of the only directors where he makes movies where you will laugh and scream at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think he is also one of the few directors who knows how to do a jump scare correctly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And you mentioned the Spider-Man films. Actually, one of the things that made me so happy for Sam Raimi was after he did Spider-Man 3, he was like, you know, I want to take a break from action movies. I want to take a break from big, expensive blockbusters. And he made Drag Me to Hell, which is
I love that one.
Which is just, everyone's like, yes, I am here for you, Sam Raimi.
He's just one of those guys that he balances out what I want in a horror film, which is the laugh out loud moments, the cringiness of tense things, but just like he has this ability of being able to just like, I'm going to go there. I'm going to give you something truly shocking or gross or whatnot. And you're just going to have like the biggest smile on your face when you're watching it. And when he's working it, I mean, like the ending to Drag Me to Hell pops up online like every now and then, or scenes from Evil Dead 2. And I kind of just sit there and I go, I can't believe somebody allowed him to do this. It's truly
the whole thing with Bruce Campbell's arm in Evil Dead 2.
Yeah. Oh my
Oh God, it's so good.
So good. Love that movie. Love that movie. All right. That's our top 5 horror movies. I think we did pretty good. We kind of covered the whole spectrum of the genre too there. So
we did. We talked about old horror. We talked about new horror.
Yeah. We did a good job. Good job, everybody.
Can I just say something before we move on? I want to tell you guys that one movie that missed out on my top 5, and I want to tell you exactly why, is The Conjuring.
Oh,
And
I love The Conjuring.
I do too.
I almost put this movie in here because it's like an ongoing joke with me and my friends. But when I watched The Conjuring in theaters, within moments of leaving the theater, my gallbladder ruptured.
oh my God.
So it was like this joke between me and the doctor. You know, we had talked about it, and the doctor basically asked if I got scared enough to rupture my gallbladder.
My God.
Oh my God.
Oh
I just think of The Conjuring.
That's a line for the poster right there.
Ruptured my
I
gallbladder.
I wanted to share that with you guys because it was I always think about that.
That movie
I went to
has
the hospital and lost my gallbladder.
Wow,
I watched The Conjuring.
I think either you were so scared that it ruptured, or I think you took something home with you after the movie.
Yeah.
Right.
It got stuck on you. It's like you it's like what Patrick Wilson said. You stepped in gum.
Yeah. That movie has one of the best horror trailers ever because it does one of my favorite things where it just takes a scene out of the film to market it, you know, and it's the clap sequence, the
Hide and clap.
that's all, oh my God,
yeah.
it's so good.
I am
I want more trailers to be like that.
What's funny is that I saw The Conjuring in the theaters, having never seen any of the marketing materials.
Oh no! So it was total surprise for you.
It was a total. So I saw the hide and clap scene blind in the theater.
I did too, Kevin.
And I think that was like the only time in recent memory where I actually screamed in the theater because I really did not expect that to happen. So, so good. And and quick shout out to Conjuring 2, which I also really, really love. It's not
great movie.
It's not as
it is great.
Yep.
It's not as scary as the first Conjuring, but I find Conjuring 2 far more emotional, given that the main story thread of Conjuring 2 is that no one believes this family, and that the whole case is about making this event like credible so that the Warrens can actually do something about it. And you really feel for this family that there's no one who can help them, no one who could save them, and you're concerned about their well-being. And the Warrens are such I think the first Conjuring did this, but I think the second one improved it so much of just how kind the Warrens are. They don't just come and help vanquish whatever malevolent spirit is haunting the family and the house. They actually like help them, like Patrick Wilson would fix the kitchen sink, and like they would spend time together. They would actually talk and like get to know one another. when the best scene from a horror movie called The Conjuring 2 is Patrick Wilson doing Elvis,
No,
you know you're doing something right.
I hate that scene.
I love it. Love that
I do
movie.
too.
All right, let's do some listener questions and then let's get out of here. How about that? How's that sound? So we'll do these real quick. So Morgan wants to know, what are your of these films, what is your favorite Nicole Kidman Halloween movie? Okay. Practical Magic, The Others, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, Stoker, or The Invasion?
The Others, and it's
The
not even
Others.
close.
Yeah,
The
that is
Others.
The Others.
that was
The Others.
almost in my top 5 list. It's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
good.
The Others is
Me too,
great.
Dan.
The Others is great. I do love The Killing of a Sacred Deer. That is that's a twisted.
That-
I do love-
Talk about a movie that is really good at making you just feel like sick, like,
Yeah.
without even showing any gore or anything. Like
just a plate
that-
of spaghetti.
yeah.
just-
Oh my god,
That movie.
I do love Stoker though.
Stoker is fun.
Stoker's great. This is a question I threw in there because nobody asked this online, but I'll throw this. So Ryan asks, "What's everyone's favorite Halloween candy?"
A
Reese's
Reese's
peanut butter
pumpkin.
cups.
A Reese's
Yes, the
pumpkin.
pumpkins.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
The shapes are somehow better.
Yes.
Yeah.
I also love the little not the candy corn, but the candy corn pumpkins specifically.
Yeah.
Those are better than the actual candy corn.
Twix.
Twix. Okay.
Thanks.
Twix.
For
Or Sour
me,
Patch Kids.
Ooh.
Oh, Sour Patch Kids.
for me, it's 2. I love Dum Dum lollipops, and I love Smarties.
Mm.
I also love Smarties. People
I
always
love
give me a
Smarties.
look when I say that. But
Love
I do.
Smarties.
I love them.
Smarties are so good. They're not
Yeah.
too sweet, you know.
I love
Yeah.
Snickers, and
That's too sweet. That's what I
And,
mean by too sweet.
I know. And then like a the thing was is that I don't eat them all the time. I never do, but like when I was a kid, my parents would never let me. They would go through the candy. I'm sure all of you had this thing too, where they had to go through the candy and take out the good stuff, and like the warheads or like the jawbreakers and stuff like that. They take that out. So like any now and then when I see one, I just grab it, and I don't even know if I'll eat it. I just like I have it. I'm like I have this now. This is mine. S2S Movie Reviews asks, what is your favorite movie inspired Halloween costume that you've ever had, or are you going to wear it this year? So basically, like, have you ever done a movie related costume?
Mhm.
And basically they're asking, are you doing that this year? Movie related costume.
So I own a $150 Freddy Krueger glove that is actually like really heavy, and it has its own stand and it's wearable. And so there was this one year when I was in college where I decided, you know, if I own that, I should wear it and put on a costume for Halloween. And so there was a year where I went all out. I bought an entire makeup kit and a sweater and a good hat and spent like an hour applying the makeup on my own face and went out as Freddy Krueger. And it was like one of the best things I've done on Halloween night.
Anybody else?
So I never get to wear my tuxedo. So any opportunity I can find to wear it, I will. And
James Bond.
for like the past few Halloweens, I got myself the mask and has gone as Phantom of the Opera. And every
there
year,
you
every year I kind of add something new to it. I got, I got like the gloves, and then I got the hat, and then I got the cape, and now I have like the full thing.
That's awesome. Anybody else?
I've definitely done movie related costumes before. The only one that's popping out to me now, though, is Annie Hall. But this year
Oh,
is
I know.
exciting because I'm being the girl from Malignant.
Yes.
I ordered like this weird thing that like clips into my hair that's like the mask that I'll wear on the back
Oh
of
my
my
God.
head.
Oh my
And then I'm
god.
gonna wear a trench coat backwards. So,
Yeah.
We have to see it when it's all said and done.
yes,
Please.
I never really went trick or treating a lot when I stopped going trick or treating when I was about 10 years old. But I remember dressing up as like Darth Vader. One year I dressed up as Zorro because the Mask of Zorro came out and everybody in the neighborhood was dressed up as Zorro. Everybody wanted to be Antonio Banderas in that movie. So, but yeah. Indiana Jones one year. Everyone as a kid dresses up as Indiana Jones at least once, whether it's for Halloween or just, want to break things in your house with a whip. Tyler, did you have anything?
I was so when I was young, I was obsessed. Like right before I got into like live action movies and stuff, I was obsessed with the Pokemon movies. And so one year I had to be like 8 or 9, but I went as Meryl, this water mouse Pokemon that's like very large. And I had
the round Meryl with the tail.
Yeah,
oh my god!
And I had this big costume, and it took up so much room, like I could barely walk through doors because it was so wide. And I had that costume in my closet for years. And to answer the second part of that question, I'm not going to wear it this year.
Okay. I was going to say we need photos of that. Kinsey wants to know, what horror movie do you recommend to people who aren't into horror? And she did tag our own Nicole Ackman on that tweet question as well. Like, what is a good one?
Yep. I have 2 that I recommend to people as like beginner horror movies. The first one is Coraline, an easy pick. It is dark, it is unsettling, but is also so gorgeous to look at because of the stop motion animation. And it's a great, empowering, good for her kind of story. And then the second one, I would pick a really underrated Stephen King adaptation, which is 1408. A movie that is very self-contained. It's pretty much all in that hotel room, and John Cusack just carries that movie from start to finish. You're gonna have to do quite a bit of work to find which cut you're watching, because there's like 4 different endings. Yeah. The best one is the original theatrical cut, where involving a box, and taking stuff out of the box.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have one for her specifically, actually, but I think could work for for other people who are also like beginner horror people. I would recommend Jack Clayton's The Innocents from 1961. So it's a little bit older, so the scares like aren't as like intense. Like it's not this like CGI trip that you get today. It's a gothic like psychological horror film, and Deborah Carr holds it down. Like she gives a phenomenal performance, but there's a lot to appreciate in it that isn't like horror or isn't scary. I think like the production design and just this journey that this woman is going through, and it's a Henry James adaptation, which I feel like she could appreciate.
Turn to the screw, baby.
Yeah.
Oh, Sophia, you know Nicole so well. She's gonna eat that movie up.
I say, for me, I think Get Out is for.
I was going to say,
it's just
Get Out is one of them.
It isn't that scary. I mean, depending on who you are, I guess, but I think that Jordan Peele's films are quite accessible when it comes to that. I do think The Sixth Sense is another one too. We talked about M. Night earlier. I don't think that movie is nearly as scary. It's creepy.
It has some good
scary stuff in it though.
Yeah.
But it's also like a family drama.
And, the tent.
And I was always when I was younger, the hanging in the school really.
The other one that I always recommend is the original Cat People.
Because
that is like classic, like old Hollywood horror where it's all about atmosphere and there's no real gore, nothing scary like actually happens, but it's all implied.
The walking down the street at night.
It's so good. Or like a horror comedy like Get Out or The Cabin in the Woods.
The Cabin in the Woods is good.
I think I would recommend The Cabin in the Woods, but I think for someone to really get everything out of The Cabin in the Woods, they need to love horror to begin with. Because of how that movie is just completely ripping apart, but honoring tropes.
Yep. Quickly, we're going to do these last ones just real quick. Ben wants to know, what's the scariest movie that isn't actually a horror movie?
Contagion is a good one.
Yeah.
Sophia, Taxi Driver.
Yeah, I put that on my list. Taxi Driver.
Yeah, the king of comedy.
Taxi Driver really, really scares me. The Sybil Shepherd, like the idea that a guy could just walk into your work one day after you've politely said no to him and just terrorizes you, like that is really scary. 8th grade, the pool scene.
Oh God, 8th grade.
Oh.
And then I would say Blonde.
Yeah, for reasons we all know about.
Yes.
Anybody else real quickly? No.
I'm gonna go ahead and say it hasn't been officially categorized as this, but I'm gonna go ahead and say the new Super Mario movie. I just have to say, like, anyone listening, did you guys hear it? Chris Pratt was like, "It's a me, Mario."
Did you need to go to Kyle Buchanan's Twitter? He tweeted like, I wasn't something like that tweet that was going around about like, this isn't what I thought Mario sounded like. And if you play the video, it's just Kate Blanchett saying, if you want to dance the mask, like from Tar.
Good job, Tyler. I didn't see that coming at all. Matt asked, what's the first movie that made you scared to go to sleep? For Dan, that was probably Blair Witch, right, Dan? Or was there something before that?
That one didn't give me trouble falling asleep. So it's the first horror movie that made me scared to go to sleep, which I can't do the actual first movie that made me fall asleep. But we talked about this, that my oldest, like going back as far as I can remember, recurring nightmare has involved a TV that keeps turning on and I can't turn off, and it's the static. So The Ring was like literally my nightmare.
It's not
baby.
Mine's not
that
a
was
horror.
Mine too.
Oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
sorry. No, I was just gonna say that I was never scared at a horror movie. Really, I was just scared at the concept of the aliens and Mars attacks when I was a kid. Because they were it's just so unrelentingly, yes, God, don't do it. It's just unrelentingly terrifying how sinister those bastards are. So I remember I was at my grandma's house and I was like, I don't know, like 4 or 5, and she had it on the television for some reason because she thought it was like, she saw Nicholson and Glenn Close and thought it was interesting. And I just remember the rest of the night and day I was staying over there, I was just like, I need to go outside or something because I can't be in this house if you're going to watch this movie. So that was terrified.
For mine, even though Ringu is my all-time favorite horror movie, the one that made me have trouble sleeping was Ju-on, The Grudge, the original 2 Japanese films. Largely because the way the curse and ghosts work in those movies is the ghost could pop out from anywhere.
Yeah.
Like anywhere. And also because the original Ju-on has a scare in which the ghost literally pops up under the bed sheets.
Yeah. My first one was definitely Carrie. I was so scared of Piper Laurie in Carrie, just like her delivery. I just like didn't understand it at the time and was absolutely horrified. Another movie I watched way too young, and also The Ring. Like The Ring really had a chokehold on me, and I would always think of Samara, aka the girl from The Ring, when I would try to go to sleep.
Recently, when I saw that movie, I thought about the horse. About the horse a lot, and I'm like, wow, Naomi Watts killed a horse.
Naomi Horse.
Favorite movie creature? Anna Miller wants to know. Favorite like horror creature in a feature?
Yeah. In addition to the xenomorph from the Alien, the Predator is so badass.
Yeah.
I know that's such a cliche pick, but the Predator is so badass. But I also want to give a shout out to the Pale Man from Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I will also say it's so old, but like I love the creature from the Black Lagoon. Like that is just it's fucking classic.
Yeah. No. Anybody else? No,
those are good.
All right, those are pretty good choices. All right, that'll do it for this episode here at AwardsWatch Pod. Sophia Ciminello, can you tell everybody out there where they can find you and your work?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Sophia_Sim, CIM. You can find my podcast, Oscar Wilde, at Oscar Wilde Pod on Twitter. And we release episodes every Friday. We have a big episode coming up about all of the films at New York Film Festival. So I'm excited for that. I also have some New York Film Festival coverage, some already up, Tar, White Noise, and a couple more coming on AwardsWatch.
Yeah.
Everyone go read her review of Tar, by the way.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Great
Thank
review.
Extraordinary review of Tar. She's got some more stuff coming up, and then Sophia and I will be at the Middleburg Film Festival next weekend. So check out all of our stuff that will be releasing out of there as well. And yes, go listen to Oscar Wilde and go on their Patreon. Go be a subscriber to that.
Yeah,
too.
we have a horror series coming to that where we're taking like actors who have been nominated or have won Oscars for other movies but decided to do horror. So we're talking about like Octavia Spencer and Ma, Jennifer Lawrence and Mother.
Oh,
lots of good ones
some good
coming.
stuff.
Naomi Watts in The Ring.
Yes. I can't wait to hear all that stuff. Kevin Lee, where can we find all your work on the internet?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at KLEE_film review. And you can find my work at Film Inquiry, That Shelf, and AwardsWatch.
We got some, I think, upcoming work from Kevin on the site. Also go follow him on Twitter. He's still at New York Film Festival. Seeing some films too. Dan Bayer, Where can we find you on the internet?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Dancing Dan on Film. You can find my New York Film Festival coverage on AwardsWatch and Next Best Picture.
Yep, Dan's seen all the films too. Everybody's in New York right now, just watching movies.
I'm always in New York, but
yeah, you're always
Me too. Always here.
Tyler.
You can find me on Twitter at Tyler M. Doster. You can find all of my stuff on awardswatch.com, and hopefully there will be more television stuff coming up very soon.
Yeah, some good TV shows that are out right now. Everybody should go check them out and then check out Tyler's work. For me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram.
I was just going to say.
Oh, I'm sorry. What? No. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say get ready for Debicki season. We're almost there.
Oh my God. Where I have to fight Tyler yeah, I know Tyler's going to review The Crown and I'm jealous. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and Letterboxd at Ryan McQuade 77. You can find my work here at awardswatch.com. You can find other reviews that I do over and stuff over at In Session Film, the playlist Film Speak. I'm halfway through a movie series with Sophia for our Martin Scorsese movie series over at In Session Film, and you should all listen to that. We are going to have our latest episode come out next week, and it's going to be over The Age of Innocence. I'm looking forward to that. And
Scorsese's best film.
yes, one of his best. I love. Well, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. Top three for me, I think.
Ryan's as anti-woman as Scorsese is.
Oh my God, that's so mean. It's one of his best. I love the film. I can't wait to talk about it with Sophia. But I don't know what will happen. Maybe Eric will take over. Hopefully, he's feeling better, and we can have some shorter show. If not, we'll be back in 2 weeks because I know we will have a new movie draft in 2 weeks, and we might also have the review of Loving on this show. Who doesn't love that, right? That's the film.
Loving.
No, not Loving.
What a
I'm
wonderful
sorry.
movie, Loving.
I was like, don't do
what is it?
Fantastic.
Living. I'm sorry. It's
Happening. Falling.
I can't. Just so many movies. All right. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you all next time.